is no France without Africa. The day Africa liberates itself from France, France will collapse as a country, because France, it is based on everything African. They don't have anything to offer to themselves. They keep on taking from Africa. So please, let's make sure that we plow the idea of African unity. We may not be there when Africa gets one president, but we'll be the ones who have planted that idea amongst our children, and our children will salute us forever.
Hello everyone. Yes, you guessed it. Julius Malma is known for his forthright approach to politics. He holds the position of president within the Economic Freedom Fighters, known as the EF. Malema is leading the Central Command Team, which acts as the core governing body of the party. Presently, the EF is ranked as the third largest political in both chambers of the Parliament of South Africa. Additionally, the party serves as the official opposition in 3 of the country's 9 provinces. The interest of Western countries in African resources complex issue with historical, economic, and political dimensions. Please may I ask you to subscribe to the channel. It is free. Let us continue. Historically, many Western countries were colonial powers in Africa and established patterns of extracting resources without adequately investing in the development of Africa. France's presence in Africa has historical roots dating back to the 17th century, with significant colonial expansion occurring in the 19th century. In recent years, France's influence has been characterized by a combination of aid, military presence, and cultural ties. However, there has been a noticeable decline in France's influence in some African countries, leading to questions about its current role on the continent. The French military has bases in several African countries, with the primary mission of training soldiers to combat terror, protect borders, and provide peacekeeping support. Africans have lost patience with France. Hence, France's military role has been challenged with expulsion of troops from countries like Niger and Mali. There are discussions in other nations about scrapping independence-era deals that allowed French military interventions. Africans have woken up from their long sleep. There has been a lot of criticism and protests against France's presence in West Africa. There are also accusations of neocolonialism and control over regional economies, particularly through the CFA franc currency system. This backlash reflects a complex relationship between France and the African nations, where historical ties, contemporary geopolitical interests, and local sentiments intersect. Macron's vision for a fresh start seems to have faltered. France's era of having a distinct policy towards Africa is over. Macron introduced a 1 billion fund to support innovative startups, and even committed to repatriating African artifacts that had been taken during the colonial times. Africans have had enough. The world cannot pretend that the economic and social conditions of Africa have nothing to do with the historical injustices that have fashioned the structures of the world. It is time to acknowledge openly that much of Europe and the United States have been built from the vast wealth harvested from the sweat, tears, and blood of Africans. Bloods and horrors of the transatlantic slave trade and the centuries of colonial exploitation, which even now is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That said, let us continue. Maybe we should also admit that it is not easy to build confident and prosperous societies from nations that for centuries have their natural resources looted and their pool traded as commodities. For centuries, the world has been unwilling and unable to confront the realities of the consequences of the slave trade. However, gradually this is changing, and it is time to bring the subject of reparations firmly to the fore. Granted, the current generations are not the ones that engaged in the slave trade, but that grand, inhuman enterprise was state-sponsored and deliberate. Its benefits are clearly interwoven with the present-day economic architecture of the nations that designed and executed it. Reparations must be paid for the slave trade. No amount of money will ever make up for the horrors. Millions of productive Africans were snatched from the embrace of the continent and made to work in Americas and the Caribbean without compensation for their labor. If there are any hesitations in some minds about the pain of reparations, it is worth considering the fact that when slavery was abolished, the slave owners were compensated for the loss of their slaves because the human beings were labeled as property, deemed to be commodities. This is the matter that world cannot ignore. This is the matter that the world must confront. Going back to the resources taken from Africa every year, Africa is still losing tons of money. No wonder that Africa is forever staying poor. France, for instance, France is holding lots of money that belongs to West African states. Why? It is difficult to understand why these countries are comfortable by retaining such funds and are happy to call those countries from whom the monies are taken as corrupt. Macron has the daunting task of viewing policy in Africa as the former colonies call timeout. They saw it coming but probably did not want to accept it. France is no longer the dominant power in West Africa. Must be all now, folks. Thank you so much for your time. Catch you soon.